Hello everyone and welcome to this session. It's a delight to see you all here in London today at the HR Technology event. And this session is brought to you by Phase 3, and we are going to talk to you about how to manage digital well-being. So my name is Louise Johnston and I am Head of Customer Success for Phase 3, and we are people behind technology looking after all your HR, payroll and finance technology needs. So in my role of Head of Customer Success, it's my goal to lead initiatives of well-being to our employees as well as looking after our customers and bridging the gap between HR and tech. So part of my wellbeing initiative is to develop our people so that our customers are served to the highest possible standards. Now for me, this really is two worlds actually coming together. I'm not only in the customer success and technology field, but I'm also a trained yoga and meditation teacher. So this really is a delight to see the two worlds coming together in terms of wellbeing and technology. I'm joined with you as well by James Proctor, and he is our Chief Operating Officer. So here at Phase 3, we operate a people-first policy. So that means that we allow our employees to really put their families first, their colleagues second, and their customers third. And that comes from James at the top of our business, as we strongly believe that we can't look after other people until we look after ourselves first. So in terms of today, our session is going to be to, of course, discuss what digital wellbeing actually is. We'll look at why it's important to the business and the costs of getting this wrong. We'll look at some strategies and top tips for you as HR leaders, as well as reviewing how technology can help embed those strategies, which is quite a funny piece actually at the end. It's using technology to stop the technology, and James will talk to us about that. So, what is digital well-being? Well, digital well-being is just an aspect of overall well-being. And this got me thinking in terms of today's event. Of course, we are here to look at different pieces of HR tech, but have any of us actually stopped to check in with ourselves? So I'm going to throw in a bit of a curveball, because I've seen so many of us already interacting. It's great to see so many people communicating, networking, etc. But I do notice that as soon as we've had that human interaction, we go straight away, go on our iPhones, scan QR codes, go on LinkedIn, start scrolling. Have we actually taken any time to check in with ourselves? So I'm going to invite you all to join me on just a 1 to 2 minute meditation session just to check in and notice how you feel. It is, of course, an invitation, so if you don't want to do that, that's absolutely fine. Probably pick up the phone and start scrolling.
But if you would like, might be a good idea at this point.
If you'd like to join us, then I invite you all firstly to take a deep breath in through your nose, roll your shoulders up, and exhale through the mouth. Allow the shoulders to drive down the back body. One more time. Inhale through the nose, lift your shoulders. Exhale, feel them slip away from your ears, coming down the back body. Last one. Inhale through the nose, rolling the shoulders up. And exhale, release the shoulders down and gently close your eyes if you're comfortable. Now start to tune in and notice your breath. Now there's nothing to do here. Nobody to be. And nothing to even think about except the focus on the breath. Now notice where you feel the breath in your body. Are you breathing only from your chest? Is the breath short and choppy? Or are you able to elongate your breath now? Continue breathing in and out through the nose. slowly. So as you inhale, feel the belly rise, the chest lift, and exhale, the ribs draw in, chest falls, belly contracts. Inhale, belly, ribs move out, chest lifts, and exhale. Chest contracts, ribs draw in, belly falls. Deep belly breathing. Continue to breathe slowly. And when you breathe in this way, you're welcoming full oxygen into the body. Oxygen, of course, nourishes the blood. And the blood is going to nourish your vital organs, the nervous system, allowing yourself to come into present moment awareness. And notice how you feel now. Smooth, deep breaths. Let's take one more breath together. Inhale through the nose. And exhale, release through the mouth, letting go. And I invite you now to gently open your eyes and check in now how you feel. And I'm hoping most of us now feel relaxed and ready to talk all about digital well-being. And if that was your first time at meditation, then I hope it was enjoyable for you. So, digital well-being is, of course, just one aspect of overall well-being, which James is going to talk to us about shortly. But in terms of this context, it means that we need to think quite carefully about not only managing screen time, which is quite an obvious one. When I have a look at my iPhone at the end of the day, I'm genuinely shocked at my screen time, and I don't stop to add on the screen time from my desktop as well. So it's not only about managing screen time, it's also about thinking about the notifications. There's constant distractions from your phone, your WhatsApp, your emails, Outlook, Teams, etc. How can we limit those distractions to actually give us some time to focus? And in terms of being HR leaders, we really need to think quite carefully about how we can promote a healthy relationship with technology. For me, this is about being mindful of our time on devices and taking steps to reduce excessive use of technology and even addiction. We know that technology is often designed to be addictive, perhaps not in terms of the event here today, but we know that this is a real thing. So what can we do as HR leaders to stop this? Because for many of us now, the digital workplace is the workplace. So as I say, we're Zooming, Teams apping, WhatsApping, emails. It's an absolute overload of the senses. So well-being in this context is bringing in balance. Yes, there are wonderful things that technology can do for us, but what are the drawbacks? Do we take any time to think about how technology impacts our mood, our productivity, or even our health? For me, healthy habits are vital, and as employers, we really need to become more intentional and start considering digital well-being before we all get burnt out. I'll hand over now to James, who's going to talk about the other aspects of well-being.
Thanks, Louise. Yes, so this sphere on screen now represents, with a centralisation around individual wellness, how employee wellness should be considered by organisations. So we'll start with the emotional well-being, and the definition of that is the ability to practice stress management techniques, to be resilient, and to generate the emotions that are needed to lead to good feelings in the workplace. But emotional wellness at work extends beyond that. It extends into the pressures of the role. And in a digital setting, we know that employees are often working solo, from their own homes, detached from their teams and from the managers with the screen in front of them. Now, as leaders, one of the worst things we see in teams, in team meetings in particular, is the people with the camera off, the mute button on, and we can't see any engagement from them whatsoever. And how, as managers or leaders, can we support those people without the social cues of things like the smile, the nod, or a concerned face? From an intellectual perspective, this involves engaging in activities that stimulate our minds, encourage creativity and the expansion of knowledge. And beyond the day-to-day, this is about how as humans we need to be stimulated, both at work and home, to learn and to grow. But it's also as much about having rest, so that our brains can have creativity and critical thinking, as we need the stimulation and the interest for knowledge expansion. So brain rest in particular is a term I use a lot at Phase 3. We have many employee benefits. I think the favourite one is unlimited holidays. And what we encourage employees to do, and I often talk about this, is to really take brain rest when you're on holiday. So don't think about work, don't think about colleagues. Leave work at work and just be in the moment of your holiday, whatever that might be doing. From a physical perspective, physical well-being is probably the most common practice at work, and this is where we often have health and safety teams. But in particular, this is about creating a workplace that avoids preventable conditions and to live in a balanced state of body and mind. Now we know office life in particular is more sedentary than ever. People working from home don't necessarily have the right equipment and working at dining tables, etc. And we know that there is also an issue of presenteeism in the workplace. Now the CIPD did research around presenteeism and found that there are two types. One is people who overwork and who seek glory in overworking and who need to stop overworking, but also people who come to work when they're ill. Now in particular with people working from home, we know we've seen examples of clients in particular who say, I'm not on camera today because I'm in bed, I've got a cold. And we're thinking, why are you working at all today? You should be looking after yourself. So moving round to the bottom segment, social well-being. So this is how we measure an employee's interpersonal relationships, both inside and outside of work. But in the workplace, it's the relationships you have with co-workers, interactions with management, but more importantly, the feelings of being connected to the one business as a whole. In the next segment, we look at environmental well-being. And this in the workplace is about having a good health by occupying a pleasant, stimulating environment that supports well-being. So it's actively avoiding things that prevent us being well. And positive environment examples include adherence to occupational safety, that's the most common, but obviously things such as a positive organisational culture and engagement metrics. Next, we look at financial well-being, and again, this is a real hot topic, in particular with the cost of living crisis that we're also fed up of hearing about, but experiencing as well. And this refers to an employee's ability to be unhindered at work by having the financial resources available and being able to make informed decisions about their financial future. So as businesses, we can support employees by having financial well-being tools, and there's many organisations in this room today that focus on financial well-being. The next and final is spiritual well-being. So this doesn't necessarily refer to religion, but it is obviously important for people who are of religious faith. But spiritual well-being is the ability to experience and integrate meaning into your life. So again, it's about understanding from the employee perspective, do I belong at work and do I have a sense of purpose at work? And this next slide is probably quite familiar to a lot of people, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, sometimes known as the hierarchy of motivations. It's quite an old tool that's been used, but when you look at it, Maslow said that we had 5 categories of needs starting at the bottom. So physiological, safety, love, esteem, and then we're able to self-actualize. Now, in this theory, the higher needs at the top of the pyramid can only be achieved when the lower end needs are met. And so if we take this into a workplace context, why are we talking about this here and now? In the digital workplace, it can be much harder to understand employees' motivations and employee sentiment. So if we were to look at these same categories but apply them to the workplace, the physiological would be around having a physically safe place to work, free from distractions, and with suitable equipment and Wi-Fi. We all know now that Wi-Fi is almost considered a basic human right for individuals. From a safety and perspective, that's about us needing to understand our role, the boundaries, And from a belongingness perspective, this is about how do we know we belong to the bigger whole of a company? And do we get that sense of engagement and face-to-face time and social activities with the company? From an esteem perspective, this is around recognition in the workplace, self-respect, and freedom, which are still all relevant in the digital workplace, but forming a digital workplace from home and around the country can be a challenge, but should be supported through technology. And finally, if we build on every other level where we have a safe and psychologically safe place to work, we're engaged, we have that sense of belonging, and we see the greater of the whole company recognised by our colleagues and with recognition, at that point we can then self-actualise and be the best employee and the best version of ourselves. So just a quick cover now from Louise on why digital wellbeing is important to businesses.
Of course, so we all know about work-life balance. We've been talking about this ever since my career in HR started. So when it comes to the context of digital wellbeing, it makes me think about our boundaries. So with hybrid and remote working, more prevalent than ever, I know people who actually have their home office set up in their bedrooms. There is no boundary there at all. So we've got people who are waking up potentially on a Saturday or Sunday morning, and the first thing they see is their laptop and their workspace. So for those people, they feel pressured to work when it might be outside, not necessarily normal working hours, but potentially they've done their hours for the week. So even though the flexibility is there, and it's a great thing that you can work anywhere at any time, we're putting more and more pressure on ourselves by not having that boundary, and therefore going back to our work-life balance. We'll talk a little bit more later about burnout, but of course this is crucial for business leaders to think about, because if we don't look after our well-being, our people are of course going to burn out faster than ever. It's going to increase job satisfaction. People are naturally attracted to where they're looked after. And if you're satisfied with your job and you're welcome at work to be that person and who you really are, then it's going to only do more for your morale, which means improved productivity. So we can see quite clearly why digital well-being is so important to the business. Because when your employees are constantly distracted, it's so difficult to concentrate. It's hard to complete your tasks efficiently, and you've got pressure to apply to messages faster than ever. So we are big users, of course, of Teams, and I think that's wonderful because it's instant conversation. But sometimes if I see more than, a 2 or a 3 on my Teams notifications, I start to panic and think somebody needs me, that something's happened. And it's that pressure to apply, which then takes away my focus from the task in hand. So for me, this is kind of about turning off to enable you to tune in. It does make me laugh, like James said earlier, about on the hierarchy of needs, that Wi-Fi really is on there now. As soon as we all arrived here, what's the Wi-Fi code? But we're not actually spending any time tuning into ourselves and tuning into the task in hand. So we need to be more aware of those boundaries, as that's going to help us to attract and retain talent. As I said just now, people are naturally attracted to where they are looked after, and they're going to stay if they're looked after too. So in the tech world, the impact of well-being is going to affect productivity and, of course, your business success. So I thought we would just take some time to understand what the digital employee experience actually looks like. At these sorts of events, we talk a lot about DEX. And let's take some time to understand some of the trends which are happening right now in the digital employee experience context. So number one is that employees are expecting all HR services to be mobile first. Now, apparently, people check their devices up to 58 times per day. Now, personally, I think it's probably more than that. And with Generation Z coming through, these people are digital natives. If they do go into the office, they've got their mobile phone in their hand, and they're expecting seamless integration and for all HR services to be app-based. Now, I'm kind of showing age a little bit here, but obviously these people are digital natives. But as business leaders, what are we doing to actually look after their well-being? I see it with my son more and more, staring at the phone, and then we add in laptops, etc., start thinking about the workplace. We really need to be leaders on this and make sure that people are looked after in terms of their digital well-being and too much time online. So again, like I say, it's disconnecting ourselves to reconnect to ourselves. So the second trend is the hyper-personalised experience. That's on the rise, and people are wanting their HR content to feel more like their mainstream social media channels, which then feeds straight into number 3 with hybrid, remote and anywhere working being here to stay. So that brings, again, that pressure to be online. So I remember when we were talking all about absenteeism, we flipped that on its head to make presenteeism, as James was saying earlier. But the impact of that is the pressure to be online all of the time. So I've actually started to see quite a few more organisations bringing in policies for a right to disconnect. And something that I do with my own team members is we actually have a walk and talk. So I tell them that the meeting isn't going to be held on Teams. We're going to pick up our mobile phones, talk on the phone, and actually go for a walk while we have that conversation. Now, the conversation is exactly the same as it would have been had we been staring at the screen. Yet the difference is we're out in nature, we're breathing to our full capacity, we're moving our joints, and we're having that time away from the screen. And actually, it's really helping us to feel more engaged and more connected to each other by being away from the technology. Number 4, sorry. There's 2 more. Number 4 is more agility will be demanded from HR. So let's think really consciously about tech. Obviously, we're here at this event to look at HR technology, but rather than reactive solutions and quick purchases, we need to think more carefully about our people first. So it's said that over half of organisations, their HR teams can't actually update their HR portals without input from IT. So again, as leaders for HR, that's something to think about quite carefully. Number 5 is employers doing more to manage employee burnout. At the end of the day, it's human resources. We're humans, not robots. And I think I said this at the beginning of the session. I'm employed as the whole person, not just a 9-to-5 Louise Johnston. I have a life outside of work, and the more that that's actually taken care of for me when I am working, the more engaged I feel. And that's a strategy that we really are keen on here at Phase 3, and something that I really recommend you guys think about as well. So we are more prone to burnout, and this does start with our constant online connections.
Okay, so just a quick question from the audience, just to check you're all still awake after the meditation. Who in the room feels like HR are the pioneers of digital well-being in their organisation? We're not going to run at you with the microphone if you put your hand up, don't worry. No? Just one. Okay. Who thinks that HR should be the pioneers? A few more there. Interesting gap there then, isn't there? So now we move on to some tips and strategies to improve digital well-being. And we know that today's generation will have to rely on technology for their entire professional lives. So one of the things we recommend is introducing roles and best practice to limit any harmful effects and contribute to the mental and positive digital well-being. Louise mentioned that right to disconnect. Make that a policy and allow switching off. Nearly 1/3 of workers reported to the CIPD that they find it hard to limit the time they spend on work after hours. So have a boundary in place around that. 2/3 of workers reported that they struggle to focus after hours because of the number of communications that they receive, in particular around email. So encourage employees to respect each other's time and limit non-essential communications. It's something that is really difficult in flexible organisations where teams work at different times of the day. And it's something we promote at Phase 3 in particular, that 9 to 5 isn't the workplace that you have to have. So if an employee is emailing at 7 p.m, it could be that they've worked flexibly throughout the day and they're just catching up on a few emails. So we make it clear in our email signature, I might be emailing you out of your working hours, but I don't expect you to reply to me outside of mine. We also know that meeting fatigue is a real thing, and I'm sure we've all seen those diagrams on LinkedIn of the start of a brain at the start of the day and then the end of the day, and it looks completely different. And something that's really easy to consider, as well as walk and talks, is trying to block out a day each week where you are free from virtual meetings. Another really important point is respecting statuses. So if I have do not disturb switched on, do not disturb me during that time. That's the point of it. I'm asking not to be disturbed, and respect that from each other as well. Louise said she starts to feel a bit of panic if she has a 2 next to her Teams notifications. If I've got anything less than 9, I start to panic on mine, so I think that's a fair judgment. But in terms of Teams, Zoom and the other collaboration tools, we know that they are there to have meetings, but they're also there for the softer side of those functions. So have wellness sessions, get an external speaker in, maybe have a yoga session delivered via Teams, for example. Look at how you can use that same technology to enhance well-being and not just be about back-to-back meetings. Limit the time that people have on screen. Set boundaries for social media apps like Instagram, but also consider how you can limit screen time from employees. And importantly, we've talked about boundaries, but marking the start and end time of people's digital working day is really important. That lack of a commute can be an issue, and we've seen a lot of people on social media talking about the fake commute, where they go out for a walk at the start and end of the day, just to have that same feeling as traveling to a workplace. So there is a role in technology around stress and employee burnout. Louise has covered this in some detail already. And one of the things that we wanted to focus on is just explaining how we can use some of the tech to stop the tech. Now, we know that we're all greedy of each other's time, and often we'll see people say things like, your diary's crazy, I can't get any time with you, etc. But if we start to look at how technology can help us, there are a number of tools that are available within the toolkits that we already have. So the first thing is screen time monitors. Now, as we said, you get that weekly report on your iPhone and it says you've had an average of however many hours a day working on the screen. That can also be done during Microsoft. So you can have a weekly screen time report from Microsoft as well. Use that to set a target as an organization around how much time should be spent face-to-face with the computer. There's also tools in Outlook such as Viva Insights. Don't know if anybody's heard of that, but you can look at your Viva Insights on a weekly basis and it tells you how much time you've spent collaborating with other people, how much time you've been in Teams meetings. It can set time in your diary called focus time, which then means that you have time blocked out just to focus on pieces of work that you need to do. There is also wearable tech. We were laughing about this earlier. I wear an iWatch. Louise wears her crystals on her wrists. But you know, my iWatch reminds me throughout the day, stand up, move around. You need to do more activity. And at phase 3, we have a tool that's pictured on the bottom right there called Wellbot. It's a piece of AI technology that we purchased. It's really cheap, and actually it's really effective. It sits on your desktop, and throughout the day, at the start of every day, you get asked the question, how are you feeling today? If you're not saying that you're feeling great or good, over a period of time it tracks that and it starts to prompt you to maybe look at things such as our employee assistance program or our wellbeing campaigns. On specific weeks such as Mental Health Awareness Week, which is coming up, we can start to promote specific things through that. It pops up and takes over the screen. And it will also pop up and remind you to take a drink of water, for example, and you can log how many glasses of water you've drank throughout the day. But a really important one is screen breaks. So when the screen break box pops up, which is an orange one, it takes over the screen and a timer starts. You can click to get rid of it if you want, but it starts a timer to say, take 4 minutes away from your screen, go and get a drink, make a cup of tea, and that physical intervention on the screen is actually really effective at making you do something, and it costs about £1 per employee per month. It's not expensive. A lot of people uninstalled it at first, and we did a campaign to get them to reinstall it because it actually is really helpful.
Yeah. And part of the screen thing, sorry James, is realising this from like a scientific point of view. So we all hear about blue light. Now blue light enters through the retina, it activates the prefrontal cortex of the brain and then the amygdala. And the amygdala part of the brain is actually what fires you into fight or flight. So that's why we end up addicted to screens, because it does bring in that pure focus. But of course, any living being wasn't actually designed to stay in that for, well, 8 hours a day seems absolutely ridiculous. It was started as part of, our, as humans, to run away from a tiger if it was chasing you. Well, that's not happening anymore, but we are living in our bodies in that same zone, and that then affects the circadian rhythm. So it really does have a massive impact just to have that time away from the screen.
Definitely. And I think one of the things talking about uninstalling Wellbot, has anybody seen on LinkedIn and Facebook that app called Motion? My boss thinks I've hired a PA, and it's supposed to make your diary revolutionise in terms of how you spend your time. A few nods in the room there. So I installed that. I thought I'll see if it works. Hated it, because it took away the control from me around when I do those specific activities. So yes, I want a reminder, but I don't want somebody to actually take over my diary and say, on this 15 minutes you're going to focus on writing this particular piece of content, for example. I want to choose what I feel like doing when I've got that free time. Now, tech to stop the tech might feel like a strange concept, but we know with those visual prompts and reminders and those guilt triggers essentially, it is something that is really effective. So as we finish the session with just a few minutes for questions, our top takeaway really is to actually have a strategy in place. Start with that blank piece of paper, that blank Word document, and start to write down for your organisation what would work and what wouldn't work. Committing pen to paper is often the best place to start, but when you are thinking about that strategy, think about some of the tools that you already have within your arsenal. Speak to your IT teams and to the HR system provider, for example, and see what tools can be embedded within those platforms or already exist that you're not necessarily aware of. And don't expect that people won't interact with them is something that we often say. We often hear as HR and payroll tech professionals, our teams would never do that. Actually, when we go and ask them the question and show them it, they think, actually, that's quite cool. Yes, we would engage with that. So don't make that assumption. And at that point, we will pause. We've just got 2 minutes left just to see if anybody has any questions. Everybody's gone quiet. It's not turned on. Hang on. We'll come closer. Yeah.
Nothing.
As someone that also works in HR tech, I would suggest that I can't really do my job unless I'm looking at a screen, like looking at my laptop basically. All of my work is on a laptop. So have you got any cool ideas of how someone can feel like they're doing something productive towards work that doesn't involve looking at the screen?
Absolutely, yes. So the question for everybody that didn't hear it was, how can you, as somebody who needs to be on a computer for 8 hours a day, feel like you're doing something productive when you're not actually on the screen? So there's a couple of things. It depends how geeky tech you want to get in there. So I've just bought something called a Remarkable. I don't know if you've heard of it. Basically, you write down on a tablet. It's just like having a piece of paper. It looks a bit like a Kindle. Now for me, it's a screen, but it's not a blue light screen. It absorbs the light, so it means I can write, and then all of my notes are converted into text, which I can then upload onto my PC and send that as an email, for example. So yes, it's tech to stop the tech again, but if you need to be productive in making notes and things like that, it's another great way. There's also notebooks that you can get. So Oxford do a notebook that you can write with a pen, and an app comes with it that you scan the page and it converts that to text. So again, it's another thing, if you're in a meeting making notes, if you can get a wireless headset, sit in another room away from the screen and make your notes on pen and paper, it just gives you a bit of time away from that screen where you can then work in a more analog world, but then convert it into a digital format if you need to share it.
Absolutely, and I think, I don't know about your role, but for me it's turning off the distractions as well. So observing if someone's not on Do Not Disturb. So if I'm writing a policy or have to do some strategic thinking, then I turn all the apps off. So even if I'm on the screen, I don't have the constant distractions from notifications. I think that's crucial as well.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're out of time there, so thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
If you want any further conversation, our stand is just round the corner, so feel free to come and see us.